So, my true love is underneath those sheets. I just remember the first time I saw them and just thinking, you are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my entire life. Look at that. That is an absolute beauty. Oh, it's gorgeous. Look at that. Look at that. Look at it. Oh, even the back design as well. Oh, it's gorgeous. The perfect steelbook for the perfect series. Hello guys, and welcome to a brand new video from me, Pickles Parker Reviews. As I've mentioned in the past, I've been rewatching all of Doctor Who. I've been rewatching all of the revived series in chronological order. Now, recently I finished Series 5, and it's well documented on this channel, at least I think it's well documented on this channel, that Series 5 is my favourite series of the revival. I just think it's great. However, watching it from start to finish in chronological order just opened my mind just how incredible it is, and I'd honestly go as far as saying it's a near perfect season of television. Doctor Who Series 5 was kind of on rough ground starting out, mainly with the departures of Rusty Davies as showrunner and David Tennant as the Doctor. Now, Rusty Davies brought the show back in 2005. So he was essentially the godfather of revived Doctor Who. He was the one who said it could work in the 21st century, and he was the one who got it going again. And obviously, while he wasn't the first Doctor, that was Christopher Eccleston, the first Doctor since the revival, David Tennant was easily the most well known, as Christopher Eccleston had only done a series before he left. David Tennant had burned him into the public's minds as the Doctor. He was the Doctor for so many people. He'd been the Doctor for 4 years, and in one of the most popular eras of the show, he was the Doctor, to the point that when he announced he was leaving, the BBC actually considered cancelling the show because these two pillars of the last 5 years of the programme had decided to leave. With even the BBC against new people coming in because they didn't think it would be a success, Stephen Moffat and his team were already on shaky ground going into this series, especially when the end of time almost sabotages regeneration towards the new Doctor. It was so much a new era. The Doctor said goodbye to all of his companions. That era was done, and even the 10th Doctor said he didn't want to go, and made some speech about how the new Doctor wasn't really the Doctor, it was killing him. A new man goes sauntering off in his clothes and he's dead. This would naturally taint people's opinions towards the new series, towards Matt Smith. And your Doctor, the most popular Doctor of that time, was essentially saying that the new Doctor isn't really him. Now, whatever the motivation was for Rusty Davies writing that into David Tennant's last story, David Tennant had gone. The era was over. He saw all his companions. That era was very much bookended, and that book had closed. And people loved that era so much that they were very sceptical towards the new series, the new run, the new creative team. As I said, even to the point that the BBC themselves didn't think Doctor Who could work without Rusty Davies and David Tennant. Now, really, people should have had more faith, because Stephen Moffat wrote some of the best stories in Rusty Davies' era. Stories like The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, Blink, and Science in the Library, Forest of the Dead, which is my personal favourite Tennant story and my favourite story of the Rusty Davies era. Moffat certainly had his work cut out, yet it's the pedigree of writer to make it work. Clearly he was going to bring in a lot of interesting concepts and ideas that weren't really present in the Rusty Davies era. He was going to usher in a different style, because his style of writing was very clearly different from Rusty Davies, and that's a good thing. I like Russell's writing, but naturally you needed a bit of a change. It needed to be freshening up. I can't think of a better writer to bring in than Stephen Moffat, the man who his head is just bursting with brilliant ideas. Then you have the new Doctor, Matt Smith, who a lot of people are sceptical of. The way they introduced him on that Doctor Who Confidential was a bit rubbish, let's just say. And Matt Smith, he looked incredibly young in that. His hair's all overgrown, and loads of people were saying, who is this Matt Smith? I haven't seen him in anything before. He looks weird. He's going to take away David Tennant. I don't want that. And a lot of people just tuned out as soon as Tennant left. Lots of people didn't give Stephen Moffat or Matt Smith a chance. So I think it's admirable, so admirable, that they came in a mere months after David Tennant left to deliver a series that beats everything that Rusty Davies did. Series 5 is easily the best series of the revival. And it does make you question why the BBC was so sceptical, because many of the things they were sceptical of, Stephen Moffat as showrunner, Matt Smith as the Doctor, both the BBC and the public, are two things that really make this series work and make it one of the best. Let's talk about Matt Smith, because it is, again, well documented on my channel that he is my favourite Doctor, and honestly, he is so good in this series. A lot of Doctors take a little while to get going. I mean, even David Tennant, I think it takes him the whole of series 2 to really find his Doctor and get some confidence. And obviously in more recent times, Jodie Whittaker and Peter Capaldi have had to find their feet a bit and haven't instantly been the Doctor. However, with Matt Smith, as soon as you see him in the 11th hour, he's just the Doctor. The great thing about Matt Smith, and certainly what I picked up on my rewatch, is how quick he is. He gets into character for the Doctor. He's almost fully formed and perfect almost instantly, and that's not something you really get with the Doctor so much. It usually takes a bit of time for them to embed into their roles. Even people like Hartnell and Peter Davison and Sylvester McCoy, they took a bit of time to get into the role. It does take a while to find your feet, and that's not a bad thing. Like I said, even great Doctors like Tennant and Sylvester McCoy and William Hartnell, they did have to find their feet a bit, and that's natural. But the great thing with Matt Smith, and I'm not even sure how he did it, is that it's instant. He's the Doctor, and all his mannerisms, he comes fully formed. Matt Smith, for someone who apparently wasn't a fan before getting the role, is just nails the Doctor. All his mannerisms, all his different quirks, it's so spectacular, and they nailed the characterization. That's another thing. Even if the actor is trying a lot of the time, the characterization takes a while to really fully form. Not this time, not at all. Matt Smith's characterization was bam, from the instant, and you've got to commend Stephen Moffat for that, absolutely. Matt Smith must have really sat down and really thought about where they were heading with this Doctor. That kind of professorial, imaginary friend type of vibe. He's very quirky and very alien at the same time. Less human than Tennant was, and you don't get the arrogance you got with Tennant sometimes. He's quirky, he's fun, he's also very alien. He'll do things that you just like, what the hell are you doing? And he's also very dark as well. The great thing about Matt Smith's Doctor, and it's almost showcased instantly, is that he's very quirky, yes, but on an instant, he can switch to being dark, and he can leave people cold, and he can be mysterious, and he can have those weird moments where you kind of think, whoa. Yeah, Matt Smith has it all, and it's almost instant. It is instant, I'd argue. The thing is by the end of the 11th hour, you're almost like, oh wait, yeah, this is the first story for a Doctor. Because while you've been watching it, you've presumed that Matt Smith has been the Doctor for years, because it feels like that. He is so instant. Matt Smith, he gives so many good performances in this series, so many good speeches. In the finale alone, he has some terrific moments throughout the series. Honestly, with a different Doctor, I don't think this series would have worked anywhere near as well, but Matt Smith just sells it. He is the anchor of this series, and he just hits the ground running. Matt Smith is my favourite Doctor. When I was younger, it was because of the quirky stuff. Why has Matt Smith still maintained that title? Why is he still my favourite Doctor, even as I've grown older? It's the complexities there, how complex an incarnation he really is, and yeah, that's showcased in this series. He didn't take a while to get going, it's just instant in this series, and damn, Matt Smith is just phenomenal in here, and you know, he just showcases why he's the best Doctor in the 11th hour alone, and then across this series, he's just so good. He's just so good, and you've got to commend Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat for conjuring up the perfect Doctor, when lots of people were doubting Matt Smith and saying, oh, you won't ever be as good as Tennant. By the end of the 11th hour, David who? You'll just forget Tennant even existed, because Matt Smith is the Doctor now. He's just marvellous in this series, honestly. Some of the performances he gives, it feels like he's a seasoned veteran in this role. You won't think it's a 26, 27-year-old actor doing this sort of stuff. His acting's phenomenal, and even the stuff where you feel like he's an old man in a young man's body, it's just the complexities and quirks of this character. Matt Smith gave us the perfect interpretation of the Doctor, and even 10 years on, he's still absolutely magnificent. And people behind this incarnation, Stephen Moffat, Matt Smith, even Ray Holman, the costume designer, really got what makes the Doctor brilliant. That is shown in this series, where the Doctor is just on full display, and he's truly magnificent. We have the companions, Amy and Rory, and this is something that a lot of people tend to disagree on. I've seen a lot of people kind of dislike Amy recently, and I don't really understand why, because I find that Amy and Rory are actually Mickey and Rose done right. Now, I know a lot of people like Rose. I think she's good in Series 1, but in Series 2, I just can't stand her. And I think Mickey becomes just a bit of a daft character, really. The fact that he's just so lovesick for Rose, even though she keeps on making it clear that she is not into him. Then it makes you feel sorry for Mickey, but you also think, like, bro, she's told you she's not into you. Like, just move on. She's not worth it. And obviously, you get the whole thing where Rose chooses the Doctor over Mickey, which annoys me because it makes Rose seem really unlikable, and it makes the Doctor seem unlikable as well. I'm not going to turn this into a Series 2 rant, I promise. The thing is with Amy and Rory is that with Amy, she is Rose done right. She does have feelings for the Doctor, but it makes sense in the narrative. Amy met the Doctor when she was 7, I believe. She was very young, and she always wondered about this mysterious man throughout her whole entire life. She almost imagined this brilliant version of the Doctor from those last few minutes she got. So yeah, obviously she'd feel a connection towards this person that's built up over time, and naturally she's going to be more likely to fall for the Doctor. It makes sense. It's not just Rose, who already has a boyfriend, falling for the Doctor for no reason. There is a connection there with Amy, and that's why it works. But also what works is that whereas the Doctor allows Rose's behaviour and actually likes it. What's great about this series, as it is literally said by the Doctor that her behaviour isn't right. She's getting married to Rory, and, you know, trying to get on with the Doctor isn't okay, and the series makes a point of that, and it's great for doing that. Also, the Doctor doesn't want Amy to get on with him. He says, I'm 900, an alien, you're a human, this can never work. And yeah, exactly. That's the one. What the Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone end scene does kind of come out of nowhere. I do like it for how it reaffirms this Doctor's stance to not getting on with people. It works completely well, and it makes Amy work better as a character. Oh, in the Russell T Davies era, the Doctor was presented as some mysterious man that all the girls want to be with and will fall in love with. The 11th Doctor is painted as something different. Yes, Amy falls for him, but that's because of the connection built up through childhood, the mysticisation of this man that she met in a lifetime chance encounter when she was 7 years old. It makes sense why she'd have the connection. But the Doctor isn't some potential boyfriend that came out of the sky and is the man of her dreams. No. Here the Doctor is presented as an imaginary friend. Amy is getting married, but she's worried. Naturally, she doesn't want to grow up and move on to adult life. A sentiment that I imagine a lot of people can get behind and can relate to. For me personally, I'm someone who is kind of very apprehensive of growing up and someone who just wishes they could stay a kid forever. I mean, just look at me, I'm 60 and now I'm talking about Doctor Who, you know, what did you expect? It's a bit similar. She is getting married, she wants to get married, but she's also very scared. She doesn't want to really grow up. So then, what's the best thing to do when she's worried and doesn't want to grow up? Her imaginary friend comes out of nowhere. And that's the arc Amy goes through on this series. Yes, it's learning to love Rory over the Doctor, but it's more deeper than that. It's her refusing to grow up, and over the course of the series realises that she has to grow up, and her growing up doesn't mean that she has to leave behind every fun thing she enjoys. It just means taking that next step in your life. Amy avoids grown-up life by going off with her imaginary friend, and it's only she realises by the end of the series how much she actually wants to move forward with Rory. Yeah, she wants to avoid him and she wants to go off and travel with the Doctor, hence she builds up the connection with the Doctor. But ultimately, she really loves Rory, and it stores at Amy's choice in The Hungry Earth Cold Blood, which really makes you realise how much she loves Rory. That's not something we got with Rose. With Rose, she always ditched Mickey and did ditch him for the Doctor. There was never that realisation where she thought, oh, Jesus, I love Mickey over the Doctor. No, she just went with the Doctor, and the Doctor allowed that. Whereas here, Amy kisses the Doctor says, no, I'm not into that, and then goes and brings Rory to try and bring them back together. He doesn't tear relationships apart. He tries to bring them together, and it's through that Amy realises that she does want to move on with her life. Maybe she was a bit scared of getting married, but that doesn't mean she doesn't want to get married. This is beautifully portrayed in Amy's choice when Amy says we don't have to grow up. It can be the night before our wedding for however long we want, and then Rory says you've got to grow up sometime, Amy. And then at the end of the story she loses Rory, he dies, and she realises how much she loves him. She may enjoy this, but she does still want to get married. She's not ditching that, she's just scared, but she realises that sometimes you need to take that leap, and although adult life may be scary, you need to take that chance, and she does want a life with Rory, and she may have been scared, but ultimately she does really want that. That's Amy's arc throughout the series. Rory is a personification of her adult life, the Doctor is a personification of staying a child. Someday you have to grow up, you have to accept adult life, and that doesn't mean you can't still enjoy things you did before you were an adult, but sometimes you just need to take that next step, and that's what Amy has to learn throughout this series. Yes, she does get onto the Doctor, but rather than the series saying yeah, that's okay, and her ditching her boyfriend for the Doctor is okay, and the Doctor, a 900-year-old alien, getting on with a 19-year-old is okay and not the slightest bit weird. Yeah, again, not a Series 2 fan. This series actually paints Amy's actions as wrong and makes you want her and Rory to come together. Yes, you feel sorry for Rory like you did with Mickey, but unlike with Mickey where he just became lovesick and followed Rose around even though it was clear she wasn't into him, with Rory getting married, you understand why he cares so much for her, and ultimately he gets the girl in the end. Amy realises how much she loves Rory, and in the end they get married. She may have been interested in the Doctor slightly, but she really loves Rory, and she ultimately picks Rory over the Doctor. Such a great arc. I think a lot of people just paint Amy as some sort of Rose clone, but that's not the case at all. She has a clear arc and clear thematic stuff going on, which I explained, and she works really well. She works really well as the Wendy to Matt Smith's Peter Pan. The Doctor is labelled as the imaginary friend in the 11th hour, but a lot of people don't seem to realise that it's a lot deeper than that. It's about a whole arc of growing up and all that stuff that threads throughout this series. It's one of many things at play here. That's why I think Amy works so well, as while I'm not a big fan of companions getting on with the Doctor, as you know, it does actually serve a purpose here, and the Doctor doesn't try and get on with her. It serves a purpose to strengthen her arc and her realising that she actually loves Rory, and yeah, it's great. It's Mickey and Rose done right. I love what Moffat done there. He took something familiar from the Rusty arc and just improved it. I think the 11th Doctor, Amy and Rory are all improved versions of Tennant, Rose and Mickey. Even Rory, I think, is just a better version of Mickey. Not only is his relationship with Amy much more developed, and him and Amy actually get together at the end, which makes both characters look pretty good. His devotion to his friends is so admirable, and I love the fact that while Mickey and the Doctor never really warm to each other, despite then being a bit at odds with each other in Vampires of Venice, you do really see that the Doctor and Rory have a real good relationship, and they're actually friends, and that's something that is improved upon in Series 6. You get the impression that although Amy had a fling with the Doctor and now she doesn't, yes, Rory is threatened by the Doctor a bit at the start, but rather than be like the third wheel kind of guy, they actually become really solid as a unit, and the Doctor and Rory actually build up a really good friendship, and there's some trust there. There's actually a mini arc from Vampires of Venice where Rory says the worst thing about you is you make people trust you and want to impress you and give their life to you. Skip forward a couple of stories and Rory says he trusts the Doctor with his life and takes the bullet for the Doctor. It shows that trust built there, and while he may have not liked the Doctor at first, he really warms to the Doctor and learns to love him. What works so great about this trio, and Matt Smith is just perfect as the Doctor, but Amy and Rory are also really good companions too, and they all have great arcs, especially Amy, which I never picked up on this arc when I was younger, but this whole idea about growing up and wanting to live out your childhood for as long as you can, it's really great stuff that Moffat implemented here, and it all links to that fairy tale feel that he set up throughout this series, which was first emerged in the 11th hour. Fairy tale feel is just a great thing to do with the series. After the more grounded, formulaic tales of the Rusty Davies era, it's so great to get a different approach from Moffat here. The 11th hour, especially, feels like a fairy tale, and the whole thing of the Doctor meeting Amy as a child and her waiting, it's all great stuff. And my favourite scene in Doctor Who history is actually the end scene of the 11th hour when Amy walks into the TARDIS. I just think it's magnificent, it's really magical, and that vibe really works well with the series. Some episodes feel like they could be ripped from the Rusty Davies era, but I think Moffat brings so much in his style from the series. I think the story arc works so well in changing the course of the series and making it distinct from the Rusty Davies series that preceded it, but also you have the fairy tale feel, and I also think the character dynamics and just certain elements just make the series feel so much more fresh. And yes, a lot of great ideas were used in the Rusty Davies era. We have a lot more complex sci-fi concepts used in here, particularly when you get into episodes like the finale and the 11th hour. And Moffat clearly left his stamp on this series, there's no doubt about that. Every single series, at least for the Revive series, can usually be summed up in its story arc. And the best series are usually the ones that have the really good story arcs, and the ones that have the weakest story arcs usually end up being some of the weakest series. In my opinion, the story arc of Series 5, The Cracks in Time, is easily the best Doctor Who story arc we've ever had in both the classic series and the new series. I've explained this in a couple of recent videos, but I just love how The Cracks in Time is implemented across the series. The Rusty Davies story arcs, it was almost a case of there's a word or a phrase that is put in a few episodes and find out what this is in the finale. And while that is no bad way of doing story arcs, I love most of the Rusty Davies story arcs, and obviously Rusty Davies was the one who really pioneered the story arc. I think Moffat took that idea and just made it better, and rather than just having a phrase seeded here or there that you'll find out what it is in the finale, with a crack, yes, it is seeded in different episodes, but rather than know nothing about it and finding out all about it in the finale, what's so great about the crack is that you actually find out little bits of information across the series. Find out about it in the 11th hour, but rather than just seeing cracks all over the place and then being explained what the hell they even are in the finale, you actually learn about it across the series. So in the Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, you learn that the cracks erase people from time, that they were made from an explosion, a very big explosion, and you learn the date of that explosion. Then in The Hungry Out of Cold Blood, you find out that the explosion that caused those cracks were the TARDIS. And then obviously in the Pandora Opens and the Big Bang, you're watching a story unfold, rather than it just being an info dump about what this is and it being a big reveal. Uses the cracks and paints a story around that, because you know what they are by that point. So it's just watching it unfold in a highly complex and interesting story in the Pandora Opens and the Big Bang. So Cracks in Time It's just such a genius sci-fi concept by Moffat. An explosion happened which caused the universe to crack. These cracks have been appearing. Stand too close to them, you can fall out of the universe and be erased from time. That is genius from Stephen Moffat, but the way he weaves it across the series is just so brilliant. He's an utter genius for doing that, and it's easily the best story arc just for the way it's implemented across the series. It really keeps you hooked. Just the way he uses these to tell a story and how it affects the characters throughout the series, and it's just so well done. He's into the finale, which is absolutely stellar. I just love the way that you learn slowly bits about this arc and how it actually affects stories throughout the series and how the finale plays around it. It's brilliant. Like I said, usually series can be defined by their arcs, and it's no wonder Series 5 is the best series of the Revive series, because the story arc is just top tier with the cracks in time. No series is any good without the quality of the episodes. I've talked about certain things which are just general for the whole series. The Doctor, the companions, the vibe you get, the story arc. But at the end of the day, what defines a series is its episode quality. How many bad episodes are there compared to how many good episodes there are? And to be honest, Series 5 is easily the best bad to good ratio series that is in the Revival, because there are no bad episodes in this series. Yeah, you heard me. I like every single episode in Series 5. I'd say the weakest story is easily Victory of the Daleks, yet that's still a solid 6.5 out of 10 for me. That story has its issues, mainly down to its narrative, but it's still got a lot to like in there, and its depiction of the Cabinet War Rooms, Churchill and Bracewell, and the Daleks' plan is pretty cool. It'll have all that stuff, even though it does have some narrative issues. It's not a terrible story, I can still get enjoyment out of it, but every episode other than Victory of the Daleks is a 7.5 or above. Absolutely brilliant, and even stories that I didn't remember enjoying, I really bloody enjoyed on rewatch. The Beast Below was a story that I didn't remember liking so much. I actually really enjoyed on rewatch. It's just some great stuff about the human condition and the lengths humanity will go to survive, and there's a great moral dilemma in there, and actually it tells us a lot about the Doctor as well. It's great stuff. It really focuses on Amy, where it gives you a great exploration of her character. Vampires of Venice is an extremely fun romp. It has its flaws, but it's extremely fun. The Lodger, I actually think, is a really brilliant fun story, which I don't really have any flaws with. Actually, it was so much better than I remembered, and the Doctor's really fun in that one, and it's almost a perfect story if you're feeling down. Is the Lodger. Hungry Earth and Cold Blood, I thought that was a solid 8 out of 10 actually. Yes, it's a bit of a retread of Doctor and the Silurians, but it changes enough story elements to make it work and to make it feel fresh, and I feel it has enough different elements from Doctor and the Silurians to stand out on its own, changing the setting, changing the characters, and just changing the general dynamic. I think makes it feel pretty well, and it makes it stand apart from its 1970s counterpart. Even though Doctor and the Silurians, I'd argue, is a stronger story, Doctor and the Silurians is actually a 10 out of 10 story for me. So The Hungry Earth Cold Blood isn't quite as good, but I feel that it's not just a pale imitation like lots of people claim it to be. For those stories which I didn't think were so good, on rewatch I was just blown away by how much I enjoyed them. And then you've got the usual heavy hitters. The 11th Hour, a perfect introduction to this era and to this Doctor. Flawless, I think the 11th Hour is. It's absolutely magnificent to me. It's just brilliant. I think the story works really well. It's really fast paced and gets going. You get such a great insight into this Doctor and what makes him tick and all of that. Matt Smith is just on full display. It introduces our companions really well. As I said, it's a fast paced story, introduces the story arc, and it's just an incredibly clever piece. Got the Time of Angels Flesh and Stone. It's better than Blink, guys. We just need to accept it. I love Blink, but this improves every single thing about it. It's got the Doctor and companions in it this time, and they're really well. I actually think the Weeping Angels are better utilised in this story. Blink uses their gimmick of sending people back through time really effectively, but the Angels themselves aren't actually in it that much, come to think of it, but they're front and centre in The Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, and there's so much more creepy here. I love all the atmospheric stuff in not only the forest but also the Maze of the Dead. I think River Song works really well in this story as well. It's got some really interesting sci-fi ideas, like The 11th Hour. It's a really fast-paced story, almost a base under siege, but with a modern spin on it. It's brilliant, and obviously you get the crack stuff in it as well, which doesn't derail the Angel story at all. It finds a really great medium there. It's just such a great two-parter. Amy's Choice is one that I think goes completely under the radar. One of my favourite Smith stories, one of my favourite Doctor Who stories in general, is Amy's Choice. I think it's such a great exploration of the three main characters. It really tells you everything about the Doctor, Amy and Rory. The Dream Lord, a personification of the dark side of the Doctor. Toby Jones is absolutely amazing in this role. He's such a slimy, just such an evil character, and the fact that he's a mirror of the Doctor is just fantastic. He's everything I think the Valeyard should have been. He's just great. He tells us so much more about the Doctor just being there. It's something that I think Jodie Whittaker really needs, that kind of dark mirrorage. It just tells us so much more about Matt Smith's Doctor. Then you've got The Choice, which the title is named off of. Amy choosing between Rory and the Doctor, and the fact that she feels at home in both places is kind of a personification of her feeling stuck between childhood and adult life and really not being able to choose between them. And the fact she needs to choose between the two worlds and choose between the Doctor and Rory, it's all there to make her choose whether she wants to have adult life or childhood. It really shows that, yeah, she may have been unsure, but she does really love Rory. Then you get Rory, and it really shows him, he just wants to live a peaceful life where he's a country doctor and he just wants to have a family. That it just shows you so much about those three characters, and that's probably the best story involving that really centres on that TARDIS theme. It's really great, and you get the friction there, which is absolutely brilliant, and the whole stuff about the dreams. It's a little bit of Inception, but it doesn't flat out copy Inception like Last Christmas kind of does. Here it actually explores the dream concept in a really unique way. It's creepy moments. It's really brilliant, really underrated one. Vincent and the Doctor, which is a beautiful story, probably the best historical of the revived series, I'd say so. It's got some really great elements. It's the one historical that I think really centres on its historical figure. It's a story about Vincent van Gogh, even to the fact that the monster is actually a metaphor for his depression. It's a great handling of mental health, and Vincent van Gogh is excellently portrayed, not only in the writing by Richard Curtis, but also in the performance by Tony Curran, who's just brilliant. I think the Doctor and Amy really work well in this story, especially Amy, who really faces a tough decision when she thinks that Van Gogh's gonna create more paintings just because they made his life better, and has to come to the harsh realization that sometimes time can't be changed, and although he didn't kill himself, it doesn't mean they didn't improve his life slightly. That's a brilliant story, and even though the storyline itself may not be the best thing in the world, the metaphorical context of it and what it does for Vincent van Gogh as a character is absolutely brilliant, and that scene where he visits the art gallery is absolute perfection. Then you get to the Pandora Opens the Big Bang, which is my personal favourite Doctor Who story of all time. It's the best Doctor Who story in my opinion. I know that's going to be controversial, but it absolutely is. I'm including the classic series in this one as well. It's absolutely phenomenal. Flawless. I know I said flawless before, but it is absolutely flawless. Nothing other than nitpicks are wrong with this story. It is the perfect Doctor Who story for me. It has everything. The first part has a bit of an Indiana Jones twist on it, going throughout time, and you see all these different characters throughout the series come back, and a really interesting mystery surrounding the Pandorica and what could be in it, and how it ties into the cracks and the explosion of the TARDIS, only to get the great reveal that it's actually made by all the Doctor's enemies, and that he's the one they're gonna incarcerate into the Pandorica, because they think that because the TARDIS is blowing up, he's going to blow up the universe, so they want to lock him in there so he can't destroy the universe. Little do they know that the TARDIS exploding is actually happening concurrently to what they're doing, and the Doctor's the only one that can stop it, but because they're locking him in there, he can't, and the universe is going to end. It's fantastic stuff. That twist is brilliant. How Rory comes back is really good. How it links to Amy, and it has some really creepy moments as well, just the Pandora Opens, and its whole vibe, it just feels great. It feels very epic as well, but it just ties so many things. It ties in like completely new elements well in with the story arc. It's complex, but it's just amazing as well. I think it's just so good as a first part, and yes, it's set up, but it's also a great story in its own right. It completely subverts your expectations, and it leaves you with a cliffhanger that is really like, how the hell is the Doctor going to get out of this one? It leaves you completely gobsmacked. The Big Bang, phenomenal, absolute phenomenal Doctor Who story is The Big Bang. Whereas all the Rusty Davies stories were slowly increasing the stakes, this one actually takes it down a peg, where you've got the Doctor, just the Doctor and the companions, just running around a Natural History Museum, being chased by a Dalek. And the universe is exploding, but rather than make that feel really epic, actually makes it feel pretty small scale and claustrophobic, like it is, because all the universe is depleting. And the way time travel is used in The Big Bang with the vortex manipulator, absolutely genius. How stuff from the beginning of the story works its way up to working in the present, how the future Doctor comes back so he can buy himself time while the younger self is running away from the Dalek, and all these brilliant ideas. I'm not doing it justice here, it's just so great. It's easily the best Doctor Who story, the best Moffat script. He really puts heart and soul into this, and it's so clever as well. I can't even think of any plot holes, which, you know, are customary with most Moffat scripts, but I can't think of any here. Moffat is a complex writer, and he has had some bad stories here and there. He can get a bit too clever for his own good, but when he's on the ball, he's absolutely stellar, and what he does here is absolutely brilliant. All his concepts, all his ideas, perfectly done. Off with the rewind and the Doctor revisiting past adventures, it's absolutely brilliant. The cleverness of seeding in him wearing the jacket in Flesh and Stone into this, perfectly done. And then that speech the Doctor makes by little Amelia's bedside, it is beautiful. It's absolute perfection. And knowing that that was done on a first take, apparently listening to the commentary, just gave me so much more respect for Matt Smith as an actor. What a phenomenal actor he was. I'm so glad we got him as the Doctor. Then the final wedding scene where it finally builds up to the fact that Amy's getting married, and then she remembers the Doctor, the whole something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue connection between the wedding saying to the TARDIS. Brilliant stuff. And the whole end scene where it just slowly plays out, and the Doctor just watching Amy and Rory dance at their wedding and saying, yeah, good on you, mate, and then walking out, and you get a tease for the future with River. It's just such a lovely ending to the series, and then for the first time in the revived series, you get a finale that doesn't end on a major departure. It's just, go on, the adventure continues, and they all go off. The thing is, the finale goes to so many different places, so many different tones, yet it all works, and everything is mostly tied up throughout the series. And while the actual identity of who blew up the TARDIS isn't tied up in this episode, and it's the only thing from the Cracking Time story arc that I'm not the biggest fan of, it's not really this series' fault, it's more the fact of how it was later done in later series. I just think it's a brilliant finale, and it is the best Doctor Who story of all time in my opinion. I just absolutely love it, and watching it again last night just showed me how good it really is. It's just got a bit of everything, and that's why I love it. Doctor Who Series 5 is brilliant. A near perfect season of television. I'd go as far to say it is a perfect series of television. If someone's to say, what's the best television you've ever watched? I would point to Doctor Who Series 5. It's easily the best series of the revived series, and I'd go as far as to say it's one of the best series of all time. I'd actually say it's probably the second best series of all time, only behind Season 7, John Pertwee's debut season, which is slightly better, I'd say, in terms of episode quality wise. If you were to judge every series on its episode quality and you added up all the individual scores out of 10 and divided them by how many scores there were, you work out an average rating for the series. I think Season 7 would slightly come up, would slightly be better than Series 5, but take no mistake, Series 5 is phenomenal. The Doctor is absolutely great, the companions are great, the story arc is great, the vibe is great, the writing is great, the episodes are flawless. I mean, it's just brilliant. Doctor Who Series 5 is truly something else, and it's mad to think that it's been 10 years since this brilliant series. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, drop a sub and hit that notification bell to stay notified for all my latest videos. Just thought I would do a video on Series 5 because I've been rewatching it recently and I'm just blown away by how truly perfect this series is. It's well documented that I love the Matt Smith era, I love Matt Smith as the Doctor, and I love Series 5, but I just thought I should do this video because I do love it and I should just gush over this amazing series because I think in a time where Doctor Who has been on a slippery slope, it's great to just revisit how great some of it really can be, and I think Series 5 is such a great example of that. But yes, thank you guys for watching, and of course, a goodbye. Geronimo.